whoever wins the trenches wins this game. I know that's obvious to say, but you're going against a prolific defense, a fast, physical, aggressive defense in Michigan against a strong, sturdy, disciplined offensive line in Washington. Because another reason, because I talked about one of the biggest reasons why Texas lost against Washington was because of the mistakes. And we talk about margin of error, and how the margin of error is obviously shrunk for both teams. But one thing that isn't talked about is they were unable to get to Michael Penix. Now, that's not only is that due to his incredible poise in the pocket and his level-headedness, but it's also because of how good the offensive line has been. I will say this, if one of the biggest reasons why Michigan was able to beat Alabama is because they got to Jalen Milroe early, and they obviously got to him late. If you can't get if you're unable to get to Michael Penix, or if you're unable to speed him up, which we have not been able to see a lot of this year, that's going to make it incredibly difficult for your secondary that has to deal with that speed and that athleticism from the wide receivers. Your secondary is going to be in a bind. Because also one thing that we know about Michael Penix is he is going to get the ball exactly where it needs to go. He has an innate ability of throwing a perfect pass, especially being a lefty, throwing a perfect pass. So who wins this game? And how do they win? For the longest, or not for the longest, but for a while, I was having a tough time. I think I even tweeted this. I was having a tough time figuring out how Michigan is going to deal with the speed and just the talent of this Washington team. I didn't know how the hell they were going to do it, because they have not seen any team like this year. When we talk about and that's something that we saw twice this year. And how do I explain this? The Pac-12, for what it was, has always been known to have fast offenses. When we talk about Washington, when we talk about Oregon, when we talk about Oregon State, they've always had USC. They've always had fast offenses. They've always had high octane offenses. What their issue was with their offense, they didn't really have a level of physicality. There was always a lack of physicality, and you saw once they went up against SEC teams, or once they went up against physically dominant teams, they would get destroyed. They get blown out. They lose tremendously, and that's not something that's not something that you can afford here. But what I'm saying is, what we haven't seen. This is one of the first times in a while that we've seen not just Washington, but Oregon as well. They have a level of physicality that can travel to other places, that can travel to the SEC, that can travel to the Big Ten when they have to go against a Michigan, when they have to go against an Ohio State, when they have to go against a Michigan State, when they have to go against an Iowa. And that is going to bode well for Washington. So I was wondering, how the hell is Michigan going to handle that? Because I don't think they've seen that at all this year. But then I remembered. Michigan, one of Michigan's obvious points of the year, and one of the Michigan's goals every year is to beat Ohio State. That honestly, I think, is a bigger mission for them than winning the national championship. Obviously, because of the rivalry with Michigan and Ohio State and how deep that runs. And I'm reminded to what last year. Do you remember last year's team, the Ohio State team? They had C.J. Stroud. They had Chris Olave. They had Garrett Wilson. They had Jackson and Njigba. I'm sorry, I definitely butchered your name. I apologize. But they had him. Now, I will admit that it feels that Michael Penix is playing better than C.J. Stroud was playing at that time, but this Michigan team was built to beat that Ohio State team. And they did. Handedly. So while I don't think Michigan has seen this type of team this year, they have seen this type of team before, where they have an NFL level quarterback and a bevy of NFL level receivers. Last year's Ohio State. And they beat them. And they've also seen fast, explosive offenses last year. TCU. They lost that game, but they lost that game mainly because of some of the mistakes that J.J. McCarthy made. I think he threw like 3 or 4 interceptions that game. Or the offense itself. I'm not just going to put it all in J.J. McCarthy because I don't remember, but I know they had about 3 or 4 turnovers. And on top of that, thinking about Washington's road, I don't think they've seen a team like Michigan. Yes, I know they beat Oregon, which is, they are much better under Dan Lanning. They're much better defensively. Yes, they have Texas, who they beat. But I think that I'm not saying that the game plan is going to be the same, obviously. But I think that Michigan has seen this type of team before, where they have NFL level players throughout the offense. And their defense, as good as their defense is, they have one of the worst passing defenses in the league, I believe. Now, their defense can get their defensive front can get to the quarterback, which is why it's very imperative that Michigan wins whoever. That's why I said whoever wins in the trenches wins this game. But because Michigan has seen a team like this before, I think Michigan's going to win the national championship. I've talked about the quote-unquote season of destiny. I think that with everything that's going on with Michigan, with the sign stealing, with Jim Harbaugh being suspended twice, with players, them questioning their players' skills because of the sign stealing thing, the fact of how they lost last year, and a lot of people thought that last year was their best case of winning the national championship if they would have gone up against that Georgia team. Or the fact that it feels so much like this is Jim Harbaugh's last year. When he gets an agent, an NFL type agent. It just feels like, if not now, especially with how good this team is, with how good Jim Harbaugh's been, with just how good this coaching staff in general has been. If not now, I don't know when. I think the last time they won the national championship was in the 70s, wasn't it? Give me a second. Yeah, their last national championship was their last national championship was 1997. So, and the Washington last time they were in the national championship was 1991. So, I got Michigan winning. I think that they've seen this type of team before. And I wouldn't be shocked if Washington won, obviously, because they got there. But I just think, especially what's helping Michigan, and what's helping Michigan not only is the fact that they've seen this type of team in Ohio State last year, but a lot of the players that played on that Michigan team is still here, so they can harken back to that feeling, So, or not that feeling, but that gameplay. Not saying it has to be exactly the same, but I think that I have Michigan win the national championship, and them capping off the magical season that was this season and how bumpy it's been. But I have Michigan winning. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.